I was married to Michelle for 6 years. I always thought we had a solid relationship. There were ups and downs, sure, like in any marriage, but we laughed together, shared our lives, and seemed to have that spark that everyone talks about. Or at least, that's what I thought until the cracks started to show. I started noticing little things, a change in her routine, her late nights at work, and the way she would suddenly get defensive when I asked about her day. At first, I attributed it all to stress. Michelle worked as a graphic designer, and her firm had just landed a big account. I wanted to be supportive, but I couldn't shake that nagging feeling that something was off. When she came home late, I would wait for her with dinner, only to have her gulp down some food and retreat to the bedroom, scrolling endlessly on her phone. It felt like a wall was being built between us, and I was on the other side, banging to be let in. One night, after a particularly long day, I decided to surprise her. I picked up her favorite takeout and a bottle of wine. I walked into the house, excited to see her face light up, but instead I was met with an empty living room and the muted glow of her laptop screen from the bedroom. I knocked on the door and got no answer. So I pushed it open, and there she was, giggling at her phone, a video of a stand-up comedian playing in the background. Now, I'd always thought Michelle had a good sense of humor, but this was different. As I watched her laugh, it felt wrong, almost like I wasn't supposed to be there. I cleared my throat and she jumped, quickly trying to hide her phone. "Oh hey, I didn't hear you come in," she said, her voice slightly too high. When I asked who she was watching, she hesitated for a second too long. "Just some random guy," she shrugged. But I could see her cheeks redden, and for a moment I thought I caught a glimpse of something else in her eyes, guilt perhaps. The weeks passed and the signs piled up. I found receipts for meals I hadn't shared with her, a pair of men's shoes that weren't mine tucked away in the closet. I confronted her about them, and she brushed it off with an eye roll, claiming they belonged to her brother. But I knew her brother lived across the country. My gut screamed at me, but I just couldn't connect the dots. Then came the final straw. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to take a walk and clear my head. As I strolled through the park, I noticed a familiar figure. There they were, Michelle and that stand-up comedian Paul, sharing a laugh on a park bench, her head thrown back in that carefree way I hadn't seen in months. I felt my heart drop. It was like I was hit by a bus. I had hoped for the best but feared the worst, and now I was staring it straight in the face. I took a step back, heart racing, feeling both sick and enraged. They were too close, and the way she touched his arm was just too intimate. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I held back. Instead, I watched from a distance, feeling every bit of betrayal wash over me like a cold wave. That night, I confronted her. I had gathered enough. Evidence to sink a ship, pictures in my mind, receipts, and a heart filled with betrayal. "I saw you with him," I said, my voice low, trembling with anger and hurt. She feigned innocence, weaving a story that was as ludicrous as it was transparent. "Oh, come on, it was just a harmless meetup. We talked about work." She insisted, but I knew better. The laughter, the light in her eyes, this had nothing to do with work. "Harmless? You were all over him, Michelle." I shot back, unable to keep the fury out of my voice. She rolled her eyes, acting like I was being absurd. "You're being paranoid, James. It's not what it looks like." But how could I trust her words when my intuition screamed otherwise? As she tried to spin the tale of a just friends scenario, I felt my heart harden. I was now standing at the crossroads of anger and heartbreak. I never imagined I'd find myself here, caught in a web of lies spun by the person I thought I could trust most. The emotional fallout was like a landslide. I was devastated, but not just because of her betrayal. I felt humiliated, enraged, and most of all, lost. How could someone I loved, someone I trusted, betray me so callously? I felt like I was losing a part of myself, and I had to make a choice on how to move forward. As I sat in silence after the confrontation, drowning in my thoughts, the idea of revenge began to form. I could either wallow in pain or turn my hurt into something more potent. I had to find a way to reclaim my dignity, to transform this dagger in my heart into something different, something that might even make her regret her choices. And that's when it hit me. What if I could use this betrayal as fuel? What if I could turn my pain into laughter? What if I made a stand-up special that could air all her dirty laundry and make her the punchline? As I plotted my revenge, I felt a strange sense of empowerment start to rise within me. Little did Michelle know, the story was just beginning, and I was about to become the unexpected star of my own show. The days following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. Michelle continued to play the victim while I was left grappling with the reality of my situation. She'd toss out lines like, "You're overreacting, James," or "Can't we just move on? It was just a mistake." But I wasn't just going to sweep this under the rug. I needed to channel this pain into something constructive, something that could not only help me heal but also make her feel the weight of her betrayal. I had always been a fan of comedy. The way a good punchline could lighten the heaviest of burdens had always fascinated me. So why not use this very betrayal as the basis for my own stand-up routine? I started jotting down notes, letting my thoughts flow freely. The nuances of my marriage, the lies she'd told, the moments I'd felt like a fool, all of it began to morph into material that was both painful and, oddly enough, humorous. I set up a small stage in my garage, using an old mic I picked up at a yard sale years ago. I invited my friend Mark over, the guy who always had my back. As I started to share my story, I could see Mark's eyes widen, a mix of shock and amusement dancing across his face. "Dude, you could legit make a Netflix special with this material," he laughed. "Maybe that's the plan," I said, still uncertain about how I could actually pull it off. But the more I spoke, the more clarity I gained. I recalled every snide remark Michelle made about my ambitions. "You think you're funny, huh? Maybe stick to your day job." She'd chuckle, her voice laced with condescension. Well, I was about to take that jab, twist it around, and throw it right back at her. This was my therapy, my way to reclaim my narrative. As I developed my routine, I couldn't help but inject humor into the darkest moments. So, my wife started spending late nights at work. At the stand-up comedy club, I'd say with a mock-serious expression. I thought she was just seeking inspiration. Turns out she was just too busy being inspired by Paul the comedian's act. The laughter that followed felt liberating, as if I was transforming my anger into something positive. I spent weeks refining my act. I made sure to pull no punches, exaggerating for comedic effect while still rooted in the truth. I wanted to create an image of Michelle that was both relatable and ridiculous. I envisioned the audience laughing at her expense, and I found solace in that thought. Finally, it was time to test my material in front of a live audience. I signed up for an open mic night at a local bar, the kind of place where the crowd was packed with people who lived for those brief moments of laughter. The night arrived, and my nerves were palpable. I was backstage, pacing like a lion about to pounce. I could hear the muffled laughter and the clinking of glasses, and I felt both terrified and exhilarated. When my name was called, I stepped into the spotlight, the bright stage lights blinding me for a moment. The crowd was a mix of strangers, some young couples and groups of friends just looking for a good time. I opened my mouth, and for a second nothing came out. But then I dove in, starting with a simple, "So, my wife cheated on me with a stand-up comedian. I guess that makes her a comic book character now." The laughter erupted. I could feel my confidence swell as I continued, weaving the story of my marriage, punctuating the betrayal with humor. I mean, who knew all those late nights weren't just for work? I thought she was going to get a promotion, not a new boyfriend. As I delivered my lines, I saw a few familiar looks in the audience, people who had been through their own heartbreaks. Their laughter encouraged me. It was a collective release of all that pain. By the end of my set, I received applause, cheers, and some unexpected compliments from strangers. I was on cloud nine. After the show, I felt a flood of emotions: relief, pride, a sense of achievement. I realized that I had turned my heartache into something powerful. The adrenaline still coursed through me as I packed up my things, and the bartender approached me. "You've got a real gift, man. You should consider doing this more often," he said, handing me a business card for a local comedy club. That was the turning point. I decided not only to continue performing but to document my journey in a way that was even bigger. I began to dream bigger, like a Netflix special. I imagined a platform where I could share my story, my pain, and the absurdity of it all with a broader audience. The thought excited me, and I knew I had to put in the work. I started reaching out to other comedians, gathering advice and networking, determined to turn this painful chapter of my life into a comedic triumph. I also began to confront Michelle about my new venture. Every time I saw her, she was still in denial, trying to pretend like nothing had changed. But now, every time she tried to downplay my efforts, I felt the urge to not only remind her of her betrayal but to showcase it to the world. Just wait, Michelle, I thought. You're going to be the star of this show whether you like it or not. My heart raced at the thought of bringing that reality crashing down on her. She wouldn't see it coming, and I would turn her betrayal into laughter, my laughter. By now, I was merely a few steps away from diving headfirst into my new life, and I could sense that Michelle would soon have to confront the consequences of her actions. I was ready to reclaim my narrative, and I could feel the thrill of retribution bubbling right beneath the surface. With my newfound purpose, I dove deeper into the comedy scene. I started hitting open mic nights every week, honing my craft and perfecting my set. Each performance brought with it a mix of excitement and catharsis. The laughter from the audience was a balm for my battered heart, and I began to feel more alive than I had in years. As I continued to work on my material, I kept thinking about how I could escalate this whole thing. I wanted my stand-up routine to be more than just a few jokes. I wanted to create a narrative that would resonate with others who had faced betrayal. I envisioned a full show that chronicled my emotional roller coaster, from the initial signs of trouble in my marriage to the ultimate discovery of Michelle's affair. I wanted to turn the pain into something empowering, something that would make people laugh while simultaneously acknowledging their own struggles. One night after a performance, I met a guy named Ben. He was an up-and-coming comedian with a sharp wit and a knack for storytelling. After my set, he approached me and said, "Dude, your material is gold. You have to make a show out of this." I explained my plan to transform my life story into a Netflix special, and to my surprise, he was all in. "I have a few connections at a production company. If you're serious about this, I can help you pitch it," he said with enthusiasm. My heart raced at the possibility. This could really happen. Over the next few weeks, we worked closely together, crafting the narrative for my show. We mapped out the emotional beats, the heartbreak, the humor, the moments of realization. Ben helped me tap into the deeper themes of betrayal, resilience, and ultimately, self-discovery. We wanted to make sure the audience could relate to my journey while also keeping it light and entertaining. As we developed the material, I decided it was time to confront Michelle about my plans. It was a chilly evening when I invited her over to the house. I could see she was still trying to act like everything was fine, but I knew better. Her fake smiles and casual laughter couldn't mask the tension between us. "Hey, I wanted to talk to you about something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure, what's up?" she asked, feigning interest as she fiddled with her hair. "I'm working on a comedy project. It's going to be a stand-up special, and it's about my life, about us," I said, watching her reaction closely. Her face fell just a little. "Oh, like about our marriage?" "Yeah, pretty much. It's going to be raw and honest. I'm even going to talk about the affair," I replied, watching as her expression morphed from confusion to horror. "James, you can't be serious. You can't just air our dirty laundry like that," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "Why not? You did it first," I shot back, feeling a surge of anger. "You betrayed me, Michelle. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the story I'm telling and how I'm reclaiming my life." She tried to backpedal, throwing out excuses and guilt. "But we were having problems. You don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly. You decided to cheat instead of talk it out," I replied, feeling a sense of exhilaration. Each word felt like a stepping stone away from my pain. Michelle attempted to bargain with me, pleading, "Can't we work on it? I mean, I didn't mean for it to happen," but I was firm. "I've already decided this is happening, Michelle, and every joke I tell will serve as a reminder of what you did." As I watched her storm out, a wave of relief washed over me. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of my narrative. I felt empowered, knowing that I was no longer letting her define my story. A few weeks later, Ben and I secured a pitch meeting with a small production company. We sat around a table with a couple of executives, all of them eager to hear what I had to share. I took a deep breath as I began to recount my journey, weaving in the humor and the heartbreak, the betrayal and the triumph. The executives were hooked. They laughed at the right moments, and I could see their interest growing. By the end of the pitch, they leaned back in their chairs, and one of them said, "This is something fresh. We need more stories like this." After a few weeks of back and forth, they decided to greenlight the project. I was ecstatic. This was really happening. My story was set to become a Netflix special. The excitement was infectious. I started brainstorming potential titles, jokes, and scenarios to include in the show. I envisioned the audience roaring with laughter as I unveiled the absurdity of my situation. It was a therapeutic experience, one that took me further away from the pain of betrayal and closer to embracing my new identity. Meanwhile, Michelle was still trying to wrap her head around what I was doing. She would send me frustrated texts, insisting I was making a mistake, but I ignored her pleas. I had spent too long being blind to her dishonesty, and now I was ready to shine a light on the truth. As the production began to take shape, I started feeling the weight of my emotions shift. I wasn't just the husband whose wife cheated. I was now a storyteller, someone who could find humor in the darkness. I remember one evening as I sat down to write more material, I had a moment of clarity. This wasn't just about vengeance, it was about healing. I wanted to reach out to others who had faced similar situations and let them know they weren't alone. Through laughter, I could help others find their own paths to healing, just as I had begun to do. Through all the chaos, I was slowly becoming the person I had always wanted to be, and the thrill of sharing my journey on such a grand platform only fueled my determination further. I could feel the momentum building, and with every joke I crafted, I was reclaiming a part of myself that I thought was lost forever. The best part, I was finally able to look at Michelle and see her not as the villain in my story, but as a chapter that had led me to a beautiful new beginning. As my Netflix special progressed into production, excitement buzzed through me like electricity. I was no longer just a heartbroken husband. I was a performer, a storyteller ready to share my truth and make light of a painful situation. I relished every moment of the creative process, and my nights were filled with laughter, writing sessions with Ben, and brainstorming about the jokes that would land hardest. I even enlisted a few fellow comedians to help refine my set. But while I was riding this wave of empowerment, Michelle was not taking my new venture well. She bombarded me with messages trying to convince me to reconsider. "This is embarrassing," she texted. "You're going to regret it." Each message felt like a reminder of the past, the very betrayal that fueled my comedy, but I refused to let her guilt trip me into silence. "Embarrassing? You're the one who cheated on me." I shot back in one reply, feeling a sense of satisfaction as I pressed send. I decided to focus solely on my show, determined to turn the narrative into something that would resonate with others. I reached out to some comedians who had been through similar experiences, inviting them to share their stories in a segment during my special. I wanted to create a sense of community, to show that heartbreak and betrayal could be transformed into something powerful and humorous. As the production date approached, I started feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. My mind raced as I imagined the audience's reactions, the laughter echoing off the walls, and the emotional release that would follow. But there was also an underlying current of apprehension. I knew that Michelle would inevitably find out about the taping. How would she react? Would she try to sabotage it in some way? Sure enough, a few days before the taping, Michelle showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was in the middle of rehearsing when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find her standing there, her face flushed with anger. "Seriously, you think this is a good idea?" she yelled, pushing past me into the living room. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me?" I felt a rush of annoyance, but I kept my cool. "This isn't about you, Michelle. This is my story and my experience. You made your choices. You're going to ruin my life," she spat, her voice rising. "People are going to watch this and think I'm a monster. You don't get to define me like this." I couldn't help but feel a sense of resolve. "You defined yourself when you decided to cheat. This is my way of reclaiming my narrative." Her eyes darkened, and I could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. "You're sick, James. You think you can just turn my life into a joke. You're pathetic." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "You did this to yourself. I'm just sharing the truth." After a heated exchange, she stormed out, leaving me feeling a mixture of triumph and unease. I was finally standing my ground, but I could feel the tension building. I knew she wouldn't let this go easily. The night of the taping arrived, and as I stood backstage, I could hardly contain my nerves. The venue was packed, the audience buzzing with anticipation. I could hear the laughter from other performers echoing through the halls, and I felt a wave of adrenaline surge through me. As I stepped onto the stage, the lights blared down and I was momentarily blinded. But then I saw the faces in the audience, the smiles, the anticipation, and I felt a rush of energy wash over me. I began with a simple opening line, bringing the audience into my world of heartbreak with a smile on my face. "Ever have your wife cheat on you with a stand-up comedian? I mean, talk about a punchline." The crowd erupted in laughter, and I felt the weight of the past begin to lift. I poured my heart into that set, weaving in anecdotes about my marriage, the absurdity of it all, and the hilarity of my newfound single life. Each joke was a cathartic release, a way to strip away the pain and turn it into something that resonated with everyone listening. I could see people relating to my story, nodding heads, laughter erupting at all the right moments. As I moved through my material, I felt lighter, freer, as if I was finally shedding the weight of the betrayal. In that moment, I wasn't just a victim. I was a survivor, reclaiming my narrative and sharing it with the world. Toward the end of my set, I looked out at the audience, a sea of faces laughing and connecting with my story. I concluded with a heartfelt message that stemmed from my journey. In the end, laughter is the best medicine. If you can find humor in your pain, you can start to heal. And trust me, healing feels a lot better when you can make someone else laugh about it too. The audience erupted into applause, and I felt a surge of pride. I had taken my pain and transformed it into something beautiful. I was no longer just James, the husband betrayed. I was a comedian who had turned heartbreak into healing. As I stepped off stage, exhilarated and filled with a newfound sense of purpose, I couldn't wait to see the final product. I had not only reclaimed my story, but I had also transformed the narrative, and I knew that it would resonate with so many others who had experienced similar betrayals. But just when I thought I could finally breathe, I received a text from Michelle. "You haven't heard the last of me, James. You're going to regret this." I felt a chill run down my spine. Even though I had conquered this stage, I knew the battle was far from over. Michelle was still out there, and I had a feeling she was about to make one last stand. But for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next. I had my voice back, and I was determined to keep it. In the days following the taping, I could barely contain my excitement. The adrenaline from the performance had me buzzing, and I felt like I was finally stepping into my own skin. The production team assured me that they would work quickly to edit and polish the special, and I couldn't wait to see how everything came together. However, as the buzz of my success began to settle, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that crept in with Michelle's last message. "You're going to regret this." It echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain. I tried to push it out, focusing instead on my upcoming meetings and the exciting feedback I was receiving from fellow comedians. But deep down, I knew that Michelle would not let this go without a fight. A week later, as I was walking into a local cafe to meet Ben and discuss promotional strategies for the special, I opened my phone to check messages. My heart sank when I saw the notifications, multiple messages from Michelle. Each one was more frantic than the last, filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. "You're ruining my life. I can't believe you do this to me. You think this is just funny. You have no idea what this will do to me." I ignored them at first, wanting to maintain my composure, but as I sat down at the cafe, I felt my phone buzz again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered, and my stomach dropped when I heard Michelle's voice on the other end. "James, you need to listen to me," she said, her tone urgent. "You're making a huge mistake, and I'm warning you now, there will be consequences." "Consequences? What do you even mean?" I shot back, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. Do you really think you can just turn my life into a joke and get away with it? I won't let you. I have friends in high places and they won't take kindly to this, she threatened. I felt a surge of disbelief. You're threatening me? For what? Telling my story. Each word dripped with contempt as I tried to maintain my composure. This isn't just your story, James. This is my life and you're making a mockery of it. You have no idea what I can do, she replied, her voice cold and calculated. I hung up, my heart racing. The lingering threat in her words unsettled me. I had turned my pain into comedy, but now it felt like I was entering a battleground I hadn't anticipated. I wanted to dismiss her words, but the reality was that Michelle had always been resourceful, and I couldn't ignore the possibility that she might actually try to retaliate. As I met Ben at the cafe, I shared the phone call and my unease. Dude, she sounds desperate, he said, shaking his head. But this is your story, you've got to own it. I know, but I can't help but worry about what she might do, I replied, biting my lip. Maybe it's time to come up with a plan. If she tries anything, we can counter it with the publicity from the special. You've got a leg to stand on, he suggested, leaning in earnestly. We spent the next hour brainstorming ways to handle any potential backlash. We discussed legal options, how to prepare for any statements she might make, and how to use the upcoming release of the special to bolster my narrative. It felt empowering to take control, and I began to feel a sense of clarity. As the weeks went by, the anticipation for the special grew. I started to receive messages from fans and fellow comedians, expressing their support and enthusiasm. The release date was set, and my phone buzzed with excitement as followers shared promotional posts. It felt surreal, like I was finally stepping into a new chapter, yet I still couldn't shake the lingering shadow of Michelle's threats. Then came the day I had been waiting for, the premiere of my stand-up special on Netflix. As I settled in to watch it with a few close friends and fellow comedians, I felt a rush of nerves. This was it. I was about to share my story with the world in a way I had only dreamed of. The show began, and as I watched myself on screen telling my story, I felt a wave of pride wash over me. The audience's laughter was infectious, and it hit me that my journey had turned into something so much bigger than I ever anticipated. I was sharing my truth, and people were connecting with it. But then, halfway through, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my heart drop. I glanced at it to see a message from a mutual friend. Hey, did you see Michelle's post? Confused, I quickly opened social media and my blood ran cold. Michelle had posted a lengthy statement, filled with half-truths and manipulative tactics to frame her as the victim. She painted herself as a misunderstood woman, claiming that I was exploiting her pain for profit. The post was filled with hashtags like ex-wife struggles and heartbreak is real, all crafted to elicit sympathy from anyone who read it. My heart raced as I read through her words, disbelief washing over me. She twisted the narrative, turning my triumph into her tragedy, and it felt like a punch to the gut. I could see the comments flooding in, some supporting her, others calling her out for her dishonesty. I felt a mix of rage and disbelief. How could she do this? After everything, she was trying to take the narrative and turn it back on me. I shared a quick message with Ben, telling him what was happening. She's trying to sabotage the special, man. We need to act fast. Don't panic. Let's craft a response together. You can't let her derail this, he urged. As we worked on a statement, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. This was my story, and I wasn't going to let Michelle try to hijack it. I would address her claims head-on, using the opportunity to highlight the real issues while still maintaining the humor that had carried me this far. Finally, I posted a response, carefully crafted with the support of Ben and a few legal advisors. I acknowledged Michelle's pain while asserting my right to tell my story. Comedy has a way of healing, and while I understand the sensitive nature of our past, my journey is mine to share. This isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming joy after heartbreak. I hit send, feeling a rush of determination. The post went live and my phone immediately flooded with notifications. The support from friends and followers was overwhelming. People rallied behind me, sharing their own stories of resilience and heartbreak, creating a powerful wave of solidarity. As the days passed, the initial shock of Michelle's post began to fade, replaced with a newfound resolve. The special was still a hit, and it would continue to resonate with audiences long after its premiere. I knew that as long as I stayed true to my story and my voice, I couldn't be silenced. I had come so far, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. But as I reflected on everything that had transpired, I realized that the battle wasn't just with Michelle. It was also about reclaiming my identity and celebrating my journey. And while Michelle may have tried to cast herself as the victim, I was determined to show the world that laughter truly is the best medicine, even in the face of betrayal. In the weeks following the release of my special, the buzz surrounding it continued to grow. Michelle's attempt to paint herself as the victim had backfired spectacularly, and I could feel the shift in public perception. The more people watched my stand-up, the more they connected with my story. The comments and messages flooded in, support, laughter, and shared experiences. It felt incredibly validating to know that I wasn't alone in my struggles and that my story resonated with so many others. The media picked up on the story as well, with articles discussing the rise of comedic storytelling in the face of personal adversity. I did interviews, shared my journey on podcasts, and engaged in discussions about the healing power of humor. Each opportunity felt like a way to reclaim my narrative further. I was no longer just James, the betrayed husband. I was a voice for those who had been hurt but found a way to laugh through it. As my visibility increased, so did the challenges. Michelle continued to lash out, attempting to garner sympathy through social media and even reaching out to some of my interviewers to give her side of the story. But I had learned how to navigate this landscape. I didn't engage with her negative tactics. Instead, I focused on the positive conversations my special sparked. One morning, while scrolling through my phone, I discovered a message from a prominent comedian who I had long admired. He expressed his appreciation for my work and invited me to join him on a tour of smaller venues. I could hardly believe it. This was a dream opportunity, getting to perform alongside someone I respected and share my story with an even wider audience. I jumped at the chance. The tour was exhilarating, and I found myself connecting with a diverse crowd, each audience member bringing their own experiences and laughter into the room. It felt like I was part of something larger than myself, a movement of healing through humor. Despite the whirlwind of success, I remained grounded. I knew that I needed to address Michelle directly at some point. The time had come to have a final conversation, to clear the air and lay everything to rest. After much deliberation, I decided to invite her for coffee, believing that a face-to-face conversation would be the best way to close this chapter. The day arrived, and I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. When she walked into the cafe, I could see the tension written all over her face. She looked different, more worn, her demeanor less confident than it had been during our last encounters. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, well, I figured I owed you that much," she replied, her voice lacking its usual bite. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our history hanging in the air. Finally, I spoke. "I want to say that I understand you were hurt when I started sharing my story, but I hope you can see that this was my way of healing." She crossed her arms, avoiding eye contact. "You didn't have to drag me through the mud. I was going through my own stuff." "I know, and I'm sorry for any pain this caused you," I said, my voice steady. "But you need to understand that your actions had consequences. I had to reclaim my narrative. In the end, I wanted to tell my story, not just for you, but for everyone who's faced betrayal." She looked up at me, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I get it, James. I messed up and I shouldn't have tried to undermine your journey. I guess I just panicked." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "We both made choices that led us here. I hope we can move on and find peace with what happened." As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't about forgiveness but closure, and I could finally see Michelle not as the villain of my story but as a person navigating her own struggles. That afternoon, as I walked through the city, I felt lighter than I had in ages. I had officially closed a chapter and could finally see the bright horizon ahead of me. My life was no longer defined by someone else's betrayal. It was defined by my resilience and the laughter I brought into the world. As my tour continued, I began to weave in the lessons I learned through this journey, emphasizing the importance of vulnerability and authenticity. Each performance allowed me to delve deeper into my truth, and I could see the impact it had on my audience. They laughed, cried, and connected, and I felt a sense of purpose in every show. Months later, I received a call from a major production company. They wanted to turn my stand-up special into a series exploring different aspects of relationships, heartbreak, and how humor can help us heal. I was ecstatic. This was an opportunity to reach even more people and shed light on the healing power of laughter. As I stepped into this new chapter, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. I had taken my heartbreak, faced my fears, and turned it all into something beautiful. My journey taught me that while betrayal can wound deeply, it can also lead to unexpected growth and connection. I knew there would always be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had learned to find joy in the chaos, to reclaim my narrative, and most importantly, to laugh again. In the end, I realized that sometimes the path to healing is paved with humor, and my life was just beginning.